Okay, we'll officially call the meeting to order at 10:08. Thanks everybody for zooming in. Our guest speaker today is Jennifer Zunino-Smith, the environmental educator at Cornell University Cooperative Extension, and she is going to discuss the impact of phosphates in fertilizers on water quality in Rockland County. So with that, Jen, take it away. Looking forward to hearing what you've got to say.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen and let me get into presentation mode. Um, about that. Okay. Okay. Make sure I can see everybody. I can see everybody on this screen. Okay, that's good. I have dual screens going, so it just takes a moment to get adjusted. So thank you everybody for attending today. As Matt said, I'm Jen Zunino-Smith. I'm the environmental educator here at Cornell Cooperative Extension, Rockland County. Prior to working here, I did work at the New York State DEC for about 8 years doing enforcement in stormwater. I will say when I first got into stormwater, I was wondering what the challenge was, and that was the worst question I've ever asked myself because the challenges are just not ever ending in stormwater. As a matter of fact, the EPA has said that stormwater is one of our nation's leading environmental pollution problems. And I'll show you why in the next couple slides. Regarding our surface waters,
Jen,
stormwater is, yes.
just so you know, we're looking at your presentation mode slide.
Okay,
So you might have to
so,
switch. You said you had multiple monitors. You might just have to switch them.
oh, yes. You know what? Are you just looking at my slot? You can see it.
Yeah, just like on PowerPoint.
So, you know what? I don't know why it's doing this on the two slides. It might be easier for me just to keep it in this mode, if that's okay.
It's up to you. Also, if you want to do it in the presentation one too, I just wanted to let you know.
Yeah, I can
Just
see it on the two screens. And the
okay.
problem is I just don't know how to do that. And I'm sorry, I don't know how to fix it
No, that's fine.
because we got new laptops. So I have a laptop and have a big screen
That's
because I do
fine.
mapping. So I might just, for ease, have to keep it in this, you save time. Why don't we just keep it in this mode?
Yeah, whatever works for you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Let's move this to the top. Okay. Let's move everybody down here. Okay. So can you see everything okay now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So the EPA has declared that stormwater runoff, which predominantly includes phosphorus, nitrogen, a lot of phosphorus, is one of the nation's leading cause of pollution in our surface waters. Um, okay, so question, where does all this phosphorus come from? Predominantly stormwater. So what is stormwater runoff? It's water that comes from our rain, our snow. It runs off the land instead of seeping into the ground. So this is becoming a bigger problem. The more construction we build, the more impervious surface we build. I mean, technically we have green infrastructure, we have stormwater management practices, but are they being maintained? Are they correctly being maintained? That's always a question. So the runoff is typically routed to the nearest storm drain, which flows, here's the biggest word ever, on treated to the nearest stream. Now, when you're in New York City, we have combined sewers. So everything that flows to the drain goes to the wastewater treatment plant and is treated. But up here and in our suburban areas, um, everything flows to our nearest surface waters. As Marissa Marone, who's on this call, will tell you, she probably sees a lot of trash coming out the outfall. Margie, you've probably seen it too. Anybody who's worked with Keep Rockland Beautiful is going to know there's a lot of trash coming out of our outfalls because everything that flows into the storm drain flows out into our nearest waterways. So that includes a lot of phosphorus. And the phosphorus is coming from pet waste. And people not only just pet waste on the lawn, like consider all the geese that are around, all the, they're relatively invasive. All the fertilizer that just sits on the lawn, because there's a lot of improper fertilizer use, and I'll get into that. Detergents, because we wash our cars in our driveways, and that those soaps actually have phosphorus in it. So that all just sort of runs down into the storm drain and out into the surface water. And that's how we get excess phosphorus into our waterways. Also comes from wastewater, because phosphorus is nitrogen and phosphorus are in human waste. So what we're doing here at Cornell is, through our fertilizer law course, we do try to teach the landscapers how to do better lawn practices. We also try to teach the public how to do better lawn practices. A lot of this is the source of a lot of phosphorus pollution, and how we as homeowners can strive to make an improvement, but it's still quite a challenge. One of the first things we can do is, better lawn care, starting at the beginning. What do we have here? He's fertilizing, and where's the fertilizer going? Into the street. It's getting washed down into a storm drain, and fertilizer has phosphorus in it. And phosphorus right here is this word. It's a nutrient, and I'll explain, what that means. A lot of people on this call probably know what it means. It's a nutrient. It makes things grow. So it's going to help your grass to grow. Well, when it gets into the storm drain, it's also going to go to a water body and help algae grow. Second, we have overwatering. You're just watering your lawn, and then you have sediment that's now running into the storm drain. Sediment has phosphorus in it, has that nutrient in it that's going to help the algae grow. Right here, you have pet waste that's being washed down the lawn. She's washing some pollutants down the lawn, and grass clippings and leaf cutting should never be disposed of down the storm drain either. All of these things are nutrient rich, and they're nutrient high. They contain phosphorus, and when they're dumped down the storm drain, they go right into our water bodies, and then the algae are just fed a ton of fast food. And I'll show you in the next slide why that's an issue. So when you feed the algae all this extra food, they're going to then sort of have a party. So what we do like to tell the public is, in the summertime, if it's feasible, to wash your car in the grass instead of in the driveway, because the grass will eat up that extra phosphorus that's in that car wash. And you're not washing that phosphorus down the drain, especially in the summer, because algae really, really bloom. They bloom in the summer. If you have any questions or any comments, just cut in at any time, and I'm fine with that. So why is too much phosphorus a problem? It's a nutrient that promotes growth. So phosphorus, we have it in fertilizer to promote growth in our lawn. But algae love nutrients. Algae loves phosphorus, so it will bloom. It's like throwing French fries into the waterway when we do all these practices right here, and we throw all this extra phosphorus into the storm drain and then into the waterway. That's literally like, throwing French fries into the waterway. So we have sediment going in probably has fertilizer in it, grass clippings and whatnot. So we have all these excess phosphorus and nutrients flushing to our waterways from our lawn fertilizer, clippings, etc. Now the algae are going to eat these excess nutrients, and they're going to bloom. So now we have an algae bloom on the water. Well, the issue is, when they die, they're at the same time they're blooming, an equal amount are going to be dying. And now they're going to be getting eaten up by the bacteria that use up the oxygen in the water as they're feeding on these dead algae. So now you have no oxygen in the water because you have too much bacteria that are eating up the dead algae. Now you have fish and other life are now sustained of oxygen, so they're dying off. So now you have a dead waterway, and you're affecting your whole food chain. So the only way to stop this chain reaction is to cut out our excess nutrients from entering the waterway. So we have a lot of excess nutrients entering our surface waters from stormwater pollution, predominantly stormwater pollution, more than wastewater. More than wastewater in Rockland County. So the way to stop this chain reaction is to cut out the excess nutrients. And some algae have a bacteria within them that cause harmful algae blooms. So we are getting a lot of harmful algae blooms, not just in Rockland, but everywhere else in New York State, actually all around the nation. This is a harmful algae bloom in Lake Welch. This one was 2022, I believe. So that's an increasing problem here in Rockland County. This is the location of all the harmful algae blooms we've had in Rockland County since 2012, when the DEC started mapping harmful algae blooms. So there probably have been more. The DEC does want you to know, if you see a bloom, to please report it. And I can give a copy of this presentation. There is a link right here. You can take a picture and send it to the DEC. And the reason they want you to report it is because it is not easy to look at a bloom and determine whether it is a harmful algae bloom or not, or just a regular, what I'm going to just say, a regular algae bloom. The state will come out and do a test. They can look at it and they can call it suspicious, or they can come out and try to confirm it. We've had a harmful algae bloom in Rockland Lake every year since 2012. I will pull out my interactive map and I will show you the progression of those harmful algae blooms. They've progressed on down to Lake DeForest since that time. And we can see the direction of flow. And I'll also show you some pictures of other harmful algae blooms and why it's important to report them to the state. So these are harmful algae blooms as well, and you see they have different appearances. So I wouldn't even have ever guessed that this is a harmful algae bloom, but it is. This is just some algae along the coast at Lake Welch. Congers Lake took a hit of, I don't know if that was 2023 or 2024, but the town is now, I have been working with the town. They were able to secure a grant at DEC to help clean up that lake. I will continue to work with the town. That's because we are now aware of the phosphorus impacts on those lakes. So we are applying for grants to help with the impacts. That still doesn't help with the runoff that's coming in, but it's to help with the impacts of what's happening in Congers Lake, including the aquatic weed. This is Hackensack River. It looks quite different than Congers Lake. This is a different type of bloom that took place in Lake Welch. So blooms can look very different. One of the reasons is harmful algae blooms are an algae with a cyanobacteria within it. And that cyanobacteria is what causes the harmful algae bloom. So the cyanobacteria is not just one type of bacteria, it's multiple types of bacteria. They're very tricky. So it's not going to look just one way. It can look multiple ways. So that's why the DEC wants you to contact them. They will come out and confirm if it's a bloom or not. And the most important thing is, if you see a bloom in a water, do not let your pet swim in it, because your pet will come out and lick itself clean, drink the water and whatnot, and ingest a lot of that toxic water. And that's why we have so many pet deaths each summer, or pet deaths each summer from harmful algae blooms. So what we are trying to do here, really trying to initiate in Rockland, but it has not been easy, especially, I believe I may have forgot to mention, I run the Stormwater Consortium of Rockland County here, and I work with all the towns and villages on the stormwater permit. A big part of that is education, trying to reduce phosphorus pollution here in Rockland County. These are some of the measures we've been trying to take. It has been a challenge. Just wanted to say this was Lake Welch this year. So New York State has a Fertilizer Law Act. Rockland County has a Fertilizer Law Act. They are pretty much one and the same, except Rockland County's law is slightly more stringent. We asked New York State, when they put out their new stormwater permit, to put in some measures to help us better regulate the Fertilizer Law Act. And as a Stormwater Consortium, we did this, and that did not happen. So we went to the county, we suggested some things, and things did not happen. Essentially, it's very hard to regulate the law, the existing law regarding fertilizer. And the law is, look for the zero right here. So our New York state law and our county law says you cannot sell fertilizer on the shelf in New York unless the middle number is zero. So you should not be going into any store in Rockland, anywhere in New York, and you should not be seeing any number except zero on fertilizer. Now, this does, there are exceptions because you can have a small bag that's for, and I had to pull up, as we were talking in the beginning, I was like, oh, there are some exceptions because it can be for your shrubs. Your shrubs, there's an exception. It can have it can have phosphorus in it if it's like for your shrubs or this and that. And because of these exceptions, everything gets really messy, and that's what makes it hard to regulate this law. So it'd be much easier law to regulate if it was like a large bag of turf with over 10% phosphorus. But the law says if it has just 0.1% phosphorus, it can't be on the shelf with the exception of this, that, and the other, and it makes it really hard to regulate. So it's pretty much impossible to get phosphorus. It's pretty much impossible to regulate this law. But the reason this law came about is because, see right here, we have a starter fertilizer, and this is a very thin lawn. This is actually a picture of my lawn when we first moved into my house. And if I didn't know what I know now, I would have thought, oh, this is a, thin lawn. I better go get some fertilizer. I probably need some starter fertilizer. And you see the middle number here is 24. And I can go to any store anywhere in New York and I can pick up a bag of pretty much whatever I want because we can't regulate this law. Lawfully, we can't regulate this law. So what does the law say? It says fertilizer with phosphorus cannot be applied unless a soil test has confirmed the need, because most soils in New York State already have adequate amounts of phosphorus. So my lawn may not need 24% phosphorus. It may only need, 8% phosphorus. So if I were to go get this starter fertilizer and put 24% phosphorus on it, it's probably not going to eat that much phosphorus. It's probably the rest of that phosphorus is probably just going to sit on top of that lawn. And when it rains, it's going to wash off and into the nearest water body. So I'd probably apply it without a soil test. The amount applied shall not exceed the amount recommended. Well, if I only need 8%, I'm applying 24%. I'm applying more than the amount recommended. And nobody shall be selling fertilizer containing phosphorus on the shelf. Well, that's already happening, and it's impossible to make it stop. And even if we got it to stop in Rockland, there's still Westchester County. There's still every other county in New York State where anybody can just go buy starter fertilizer or whatever they need. So I do think that fertilizer is a big issue. And then there's supposed to be signs up in the stores discussing the law. And we've tried to work with the stores, and it just doesn't happen. So Matt, I know you know something about fertilizer. Am I right on this? I mean, because I cannot grow anything. I freely admit that. I'm just going with what our horticultural, our fertilizer law.
Sorry, I was muted there.
That's okay.
Yeah, certainly to use it for turf, you should get soil tests. Phosphorus for turf and why it is used for new seeding, which is the word starter, supposed to be either used for seeding or sod. And it's used by the plant for root development.
Mm-hmm.
So roots and flowers. So that's why you'll see a big middle number, a big phosphorus number, percentage of phosphorus. If you get like a Miracle Grow for your flower garden, it'll be a 10, 10, 10 or 15, 30, 15 because the plant uses it for flowers. Don't need flowers and turf. So for the most part, the phosphorus would be used for root development. Does that answer? Is that where that
Yeah,
answer?
so I think like if we were to really want to do something with this law, we would need to say anything more than like 10% on a large bag that's for like the whole lawn. That includes, I don't know how to say it. I don't know if it's the right place to have the discussion, but anything for like your whole turf that's over one of those big large bags where you really intend to put a lot of fertilizer down. Over 10% phosphorus should be banned from the shelf. And I don't know how we would change our law to say that, but I think it's those big bags of fertilizer because some people get bags. We've learned just by speaking to people, they get big bags of fertilizer and they calculate the lawn to include their whole house, and they're just throwing it down. I mean, I see my neighbor do it. It's just like, oh, and you can't tell them otherwise. It's just so fertilizer is just an issue. I think at the end of the day, it's just a big issue. Um, Sediment runoff, which also ties in with fertilizer, is also an issue. This was my house. This is when we moved in. We have like a lot of people. We had a very thin lawn, and it was apparently because there was a very thin turf with sparse dead grass. So there was less water infiltration. Apparently the grass was mowed too low, which stressed it out in the summer and promoted invasive weeds, which do not hold stormwater like a thicker turf canopy will. And the edgings were poor, so runoff was going over the edge. So we had a lot of sediment runoff. A lot of people have this issue because, you go out, you mow your lawn, something you do regularly, and they're not really aware that. Next slide. At our house, we started to maintain a thicker turf. Of course, my husband understands turf. It was his degree. So he grew in turf. He maintains and mows it at 3 to 4 inches. But this is turf that he actually put in. But if he didn't put in turf, this is how you still want to maintain and mow your lawn at 3 to 4 inches, which holds stormwater by allowing your root systems to absorb the runoff. So right here, what we're trying to let the public know more about is we have sustainable landscapes webinars, and it talks about how to grow in a thicker turf. We're trying to help the public know that as well. It hasn't another thing that hasn't been easy, just try to promote thicker lawns with the public. One initiative we're really trying to do here at CCE, native plants. I just wanted to show that we planted these native plants at my house. We had a major drought, and these two plants right here, the bee blossom and the purple top verbena, never died. They just lived, they bloomed, they never died. So water-wise landscaping is an initiative we do here at CCE. It's been wonderful. So one of the other things, a biggest thing that you can do in Rockland, if you see something, say something. We always tell the public this as well. Any dumping to the storm drain, because we have a lot of businesses dumping grease, but also wash water, which contains phosphorus, and it's going to go to the nearest storm drain. Construction is an issue. Sediment is considered a chemical pollutant at the DEC because it contains phosphorus. And it's just, call your local municipality. They will try to shut down the site and get the site into compliance. But that can be very hard to do. So that's another issue that will always be an ongoing issue. Never flush wipes. A lot of people do not realize this. I realize this because I worked in wastewater with the New York City I worked with New York City's drinking water and wastewater system for quite a few years. We have a flushing wipes issue. We have a flushing wipes issue here in Rockland as well. We have it everywhere. I believe I took this at Yonkers wastewater treatment plant. This is what many treatment plants look like because the wipes overwhelm everything. Wastewater has nutrients in it. Our waste is nutrient rich because waste is meant to make things grow on the ground. So when we get, what happens is the sewer lines get clogged. During heavy rain, we get what's called sanitary sewer overflows. If there's too many wipes in the line, they can cause these sanitary sewer overflows. And then we get in addition to pathogens, we get nutrients that's running into our local waters. And of course, keep your septics properly maintained, because that will go into our local lakes if there's septics around the lakes. This is what could be happening at Lake Welch. I'm not really sure, because I haven't looked into that issue enough. And I wanted to take a look at my interactive map. I hope we're good at time. We can look at that a few minutes and discuss. But before I did, I just want to make the resources. We always like to let the public know about the resources at CCE. Every year we have a native plant sale. I have a fact sheet page. This is linked to my fact sheet page. We have water-wise landscaping, all kinds of information on there. I've got my stormwater and water quality education page, talks about the nutrient pollution, my interactive maps. I can put anything on the interactive map that's available to the public relating to stormwater and water quality. So if you have data or information you'd like to share, please let me know. We have the horticultural diagnostic lab, plant diseases, tick ID, all that stuff. If you're a Veolia customer, you can come in and get a rain barrel, and you can get they are $75, I think, and you can get a $50 rebate, I believe. This is what they look like. We also have a Master Gardener program. They're here today doing training, and we run the Stormwater Consortium of Rockland County. In addition to many other things, you can sign up for events right here. They're always doing programming, gardening, and all kinds of stuff. So before I go into my interactive map to show a little more about what's going on with water quality in Rockland, are there any questions on the phosphorus, the fertilizer, anything like that?
Oh, yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
I'm not sure where the raise hand thing is, so my apologies. Larry
That's okay.
Vale here.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering, your map of where the occurrences are kind of interesting, judging on the sources you mentioned, because most of the sources are probably related to people, and yet some of them are in what we consider more remote, pristine areas like Lake Welch. And, it's not pristine, but it's a lot different than in the urban areas. And I don't see very many in the urban areas. So, maybe just because nobody reports it.
Yeah, that's what I'm
No.
thinking. Yeah.
But anyway, so if you have a comment about that, it'd be great. But I'm just curious about amounts. I mean, sometimes I try to look at the New York State law, and it says, well, the amount of phosphorus that is acceptable is the level up until the level that causes eutrophication. Well, I don't know what that is.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
but maybe there is a standard, maybe, 0.4 milligrams per liter or something. I don't know what it is, but what can you tell me about the standard? And what can you tell me about the amount in Rockland County in the various streams, whether it exceeds the standard or not?
So I think you're right on that. And this is information I haven't looked into since we were trying to get it work with the county and get it off the shelf like about 2 years ago. But I think you're right. I think it's just up to the amount of eutrophication. And it was just impossible, because I think the law said like 0.1%, it can't be on the shelf, but there was all these exceptions, and I have it right
sorry,
here in my
I'm talking
flyer.
about not in the products, but in the streams, in the water.
Oh,
What
in the
do you know
streams.
about what's there?
Okay, let's go back to
Or
lakes.
lakes,
Yeah. So as you mean, as far as phosphorus goes?
Yeah, I mean, if it's it would be nice to correlate the amount of phosphorus in the water with the problem. And, it seems like a logical step, and then you find out more about sources.
Right, right. So as far as like the phosphorus in the water, what we have right now in Rockland is if I turn off the harmful algae blooms, these waters right here are the ones that have been tested to be truly impacted by phosphorus, and they're so impacted they're now on that 303D, the 303D list, which is the Clean Water Act list. but I know you're talking about numbers. I don't have numbers for you right now because I just haven't looked that far into it. I just kind of look at the relative picture, and then I can meet with the towns and villages like I did with Clarkstown. And I can say, okay, you have water bodies impacted for phosphorus. We've had repetitive harmful algae blooms there. We also have Class A waters here, which are drinking waters. I have that on another layer. Let's go after a grant for you. You have a high probability of getting one for Congers Lake to clean up the issue. So that's more of what I keep here on this list.
Yeah, and my last comment, if you're looking for targets that need phosphorus remediation, the Sparkill Creek has a pretty extensive study that's been completed on all nutrients, and it clearly exceeds, what anybody would consider a standard, and it would be a great candidate for 303D listing. So if anybody comes up with some grant opportunities for that, the work is already done.
Yes, as a matter of
Yeah.
fact, I would like to have a quick conversation about that as well. Because when we look at our mapping here, and this is relative, the Sparkill Creek conversation is relative to phosphorus in Rockland County. This is why I think keeping an interactive map and showing it to the public is so important. One point I want to make is that this interactive map is difficult to navigate. My previous one was not. The new platform on Esri, and Adam and I had spoken about this. Adam Bradford, he's on this call, had spoken about this. I can't figure out how to make this map a little more user friendly to the public. So I'm trying to get help to make this map more user friendly to the public so they can understand kind of what I know. But it's very critical to have a water quality map when you're doing stormwater, because nobody really understands how much grant opportunities are out there and what you need to know to go after a grant, to tell the state to go after a grant. So for instance, when I turn on my harmful algae blooms and I turn on my sub watersheds right here, and then I turn on my national hydrologic data, which gives me water quality, which gives me direction of flow of surface water, I can now see that in Rockland Lake, the water will flow to Swartout Lake and then Congers Lake. You see these little arrows? It will flow to Swartout Lake and then Congers Lake. And then the direction of flow then goes down to Lake DeForest. And I have been keeping, when you click on each of the harmful algae bloom layers, I have been keeping a list of data. You click on HAB history, I will update it after each year. But basically, when I look at harmful algae bloom history, I know now that the blooms were first reported in Rockland Lake, and then they have been progressing along the line down to Lake DeForest. So that's important for me to know. Somebody who runs a stormwater consortium, that's important for you all to know, and the Water Quality Coordinating Committee, that's important to keep progress of, and equally important in the Sparkill Creek as well. So when we do our outreach and education, Adam and I, we touched base on this. It's important to educate the public. If you live in this watershed, what are the issues? What can you do? Well, we have a phosphorus problem clearly in this watershed that we certainly know of. So these are the things that you can do, better lawn care, phosphorus, whatnot. However, if you live in this watershed, this sub-watershed right here, where everything drains to the Pascack Brook, we tend to have more of a flushing wipes issue. Oh gosh, our lights just went out, so I hope my power doesn't go out. We tend to have more of a flushing wipes issue. We have a high density of population. We have a flushing wipes issue right here in this watershed. Now, if we come down to this watershed where the Sparkill Creek is, and I do believe the Sparkill Creek is listed on 303D. I think I just have the lakes listed here. Yes, the Sparkill Creek is listed. Here's the thing with the Sparkill Creek. And when you notice the Sparkill Creek is only shown when it comes back up into New York from New Jersey.
Oh.
But I believe doesn't it originate up here around
Yeah, yes, that's well, this might get off topic here, but that's what's termed the lower segment, and the upper segment is the part that is for the rest of the watershed. And then of course there's the New Jersey side, which is another whole story.
Right.
But the one I was talking about is a study on the upper, because it's not listed 303D now, but it requires verification for the
Right.
last 15 years. But there's data out there that show that the nutrients are clearly a problem and exceed the limits that have been established. That doesn't mean that anybody's observing heavy nutrification, or that there's not lakes on the stream, so you don't see as much stagnant water as you do in a lake. So it's not going to be as much of an immediate problem, but it still exceeds the limits. And if anybody were looking for a target, the data is already there. I mean, it's already been done, and it's already kind of on the endless list of the DEC to get to, but maybe it needs somebody, with your expertise that could look at it and get some help for it.
Has that data been submitted to the DEC? Because they
Oh, yeah.
put out,
It's qualified. It's been qualified, it's gone through review, and it's now officially accepted.
Okay, so they haven't listed it then.
No, listing it as 303D is one thing. Look, you probably know more about this than I do, but accepting the data that looks like it needs to then be used for some purpose is one thing, and I think that's the status that it is. But then actually getting on the list is something else.
Yeah,
Well,
because
it's
it
on the
has to
list,
meet
but
standard.
it's not confirmed. It says needs verification.
Oh,
It should be. It's on the list,
so
but
maybe it's on the impaired list.
yeah, it's not determined impaired. It says the degree of, or the fact of impairment needs verification. Anyway, that's the other segment that you don't show on your map that
Yeah.
already have data. I'm not worried about the lower one. That's already declared impaired.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there's two different lists. There's what's called the WIPWL, and then there's the 303D. So it could be on the WIPWL, but I do know, I'm understanding what you're saying now. It needs further verification. So the New York State DEC, they put out rigorous standards and rigorous guides to what that data needs to get listed. And yeah, it is pretty strenuous to get on the 303D list, but you do have to follow those guides. It has to be like 2 years of consistent data at least to get on the 303D list. So that's probably what they're saying needs verification. If you need guidance on that information, just reach out to me and I'll let you know. I went over that with Clarkstown, and I can get that to you. So,
and this is Lori. Do you have more to say there?
oh no, I'm glad to know that, because I was thinking, perhaps the Sparkill Creek is picking up its pollution from the lower end in New Jersey, and if it was, we'd have to do like a tri-state DEC EPA effort to see what we could do to get grants to better improve that situation. But if there are,
I'd settle for a grant in the New York State portion. Let's not get too complicated.
Oh, I don't want to. So if there is data that supports the impacts on the upper level, then of the stream, then that definitely makes things easier. Yeah.
Yeah, it exists.
Okay. I'm glad to put any information on my map. I can put any information on my map as long as it's public, because it's Cornell, a Cornell map.
Great.
Okay, Laurie.
Yeah, the question, I have a couple of questions. One, and I think Nicole's on this call, she may know, but Kelly Nolan from Water Research Associates, I know his name. He did years of stream monitoring here and a handful of streams every year. I think his data collecting was stimulated by a concern over road salts and runoffs on our stream, but I think he collected phosphorus data. I don't know, but there should be somewhere. The Department of Environmental Resources should have some years of data so we could get some background data.
Sure. We can always connect. I could link to a web page. Absolutely.
I was interested to hear, I heard a little bit of futility talking about the phosphorus products in our stores.
Yeah.
And thought that that could be revisited, not in this call, but just that really stood out for me.
Yeah.
That seems like something that there could be an organized approach to, kind of beat the drum around that. A task force or something. We don't have to talk about it right now, but if this is such a big problem, we should really move towards zero tolerance. And I don't know how we're going to do it, but I know we're on the, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Laurie. I'd be glad to just start with where I initiated and the problems we ran into so we don't repeat the wheel. And
Yeah.
maybe what we think would be a better approach in Rockland. And because I just think that the way the law exists now is just too hard to do anything about it. And then we could even, because I know the people I work with the people a lot at DEC who wrote the permit, and I could say, just FYI, we took this approach. It does not work. We asked you to do this. It didn't happen. We could use your help with this, but I don't know. So there are things we can do to really try that could make a difference.
I think that's something I've seen over the years. Every department, every one of us on this call has a range of actions that we can take, and then we hit the limit of what we can do.
Yeah.
Like, I can't change policy. I'm a citizen. But when we work together, we can overlap and find out where one of us hits our limits and someone else can take it up. And the public is obviously very involved in the behaviors here that are creating the situation, but the public is hardly involved. It's mostly those of us who are a little more in the know that keep talking on it. And I was reflecting on how during the no desalination era, Columbia students did a year-long study, a deep study on behavioral change, public behavioral change. Margie will remember this. And overwhelmingly, they found all across the nation, it was really like the neighbor to neighbor community conversations that really led to the more wide sweeping changes. And I'd be very interested in being involved in, even in the Spark Hill, we're talking about this, how to increase our public facing messaging. Do we go through neighborhoods? Do we start a bike brigade or something in the summer and go around and simply talk to people? Some of the more simple tactics, I think, could be woven into all of this. So that, as they say, so the data really does the talking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could always, I want to apply for a grant to redo this, to redo my stormwater website, because it's just like when I did it when I got out of the DEC. So it's very regulatory approach, which helps me a lot, because if someone will call me and be like, can you tell me where to sign up for, because you can sign up for sanitary sewer overflow, so you know when you get alerts when they're happening, which is great. It's great for me, so I know exactly when they're happening. I can alert the municipality and be like, FYI, which most of the time they already know, but I can alert my interns so they're aware, and they're like, oh, thanks, they know when to sign. Citizens will call me and be like, I looked on your website, I can't find it. I'm like, I know, I'm sorry. I'd be like, here you go, here it is right now. So I know exactly where to find everything, but people don't. It's got too much information.
I think these interfaces is where a lot of potential can be found. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say. I know probably Larry was there. We did a trip to the wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah.
And they were talking about, the wet wipes problem. It's so funny because
Yes.
it's like a half a mile from the big wet wipes business down here.
I've spoken with
crazy,
them. And I think that we could get some collaboration with them to help them. Perhaps they could do, I have it written on my to-do list, which is horribly long. But I really want to get on this to hit these things. I'm hoping that they might be able to collaborate with us to do some of the communication on not flushing wipes in our most densely populated areas in multiple languages. I mean, and they do outreach. So commercials.
The perception at the wastewater plant was that they had no power or authority to issue any messages asking for behavioral change.
Yeah.
Orangetown felt like they couldn't do that. I don't know if it was Orangetown. I think it was Orangetown plant that we visited. Yeah. And the talk at the moment was like, well, as a watershed group, we could. A watershed group can issue messages like that.
Yes.
So that's my clearest example of what I'm talking about today, is this interface between what we can do and they can't do. But yeah, they were ultimately frustrated because it's a really huge problem and an expense. That's another
Yes.
thing. If the citizens knew how much, the problem, the expense. But it's always education. It seems to me most everything comes down to
Laurie,
consistent education.
these two things you talked about, initiating change with fertilizer and initiating change with wipes, two of the hugest problems we have anywhere and probably the world. And if you were talking about initiating change on those scopes, those would be like, we'd be the first people to initiate change really anywhere in New York State with that.
Yeah,
it would just be
like
amazing.
A clear problem to address. It doesn't skate all over the place. So yeah, I love there's so many people here today. I'm so glad I could be here. Thank you so much,
Right.
Jeff.
I
Yeah.
mean, we would be leading the example, and our stormwater consortium is leading examples. It hasn't been easy, but it's because Rockland has such a great group of people, environmental people. And since I did enforcement with the DEC over 7 counties, I've never seen a better group of environmentally connected people. That's why I have you all on my volunteer and education page before I forget. And if you're not on there, please let me know. Laurie, you are on there. Volunteer. And people call me all the time and say, what can I do? I'm like, go to this page.
Well, Jennifer, that's great. Does anybody else have any kind of follow-up questions for Jennifer or comments?
I have a
Before.
comment, and that is, so first of all, Lori, those were all great comments.
Yes.
And Jen, I love where this is going. A lot of us work with youth, and I think that youth are a primary opportunity to spread the word and to share the word. They're energized, they're more mobile. And this, I mean, we just came off the summer where we have like almost an army of individuals that kind of are here in Rockland. But that gives us some time to think about next summer and how we might be able to really tackle that through some of their voices and some of their activities. And, I think that it would be great to kind of have a subcommittee that's just thinking about how could we do that.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make that comment and throw it out as a possibility.
Yeah. And it's great to see when my interns come to me as they're becoming young professionals, and they'll still come to me and say, this is an issue or this is an issue as they're working. And I'm like, what's inspiring to me is that you as a young person, environmental science is such a wide degree. It wasn't before. So that's why you're seeing now, as a younger person, you're aware of things, but someone who's been in the workplace for many, many years may not be so aware. So as the time goes on, there's going to become more awareness. So, and even as like you're saying, Margie, to put more awareness in their hands right now is just amazing. You guys do such amazing job with the youth. So I work with the towns and villages and the DEC. I'm more on the upper end, even though my job is environmental educator. I'm really not an educator. I'm a regulator. So that's where it gets tough. I don't know how to educate much except with my individual interns. So regulation, I'm all there, but we're a great group together. I really love Rockland. I truly love it. I wish I had more time for boots on the ground, but it's just so much. One person for 23 towns and municipalities is just, it stretches you very much. But together, we just can be great. So,
yes.
Jennifer, this is Michelle from Rockland County Department of Health.
Hi.
Next week is Senator Weber's Senior Fair.
Yes.
And you also say about the youth, but it's everyone. So because sometimes youth can tell their parents something, but if they don't understand why, maybe that's the piece, or their grandparents. Is there anyone going to be at the Senior Fair? Especially, I'm just thinking with wipes. I wonder if that's the piece, and even our elected officials go on WRCR. I know it's a local radio station. Maybe not everybody listens, but there are people who can, I can talk about that. I know Mike Wilson does do that, his one segment, but the Senior Fair, I just think that just having a poster, what are you doing? Don't flush your wipes. I know that may not sound very well, it's not sexy, but still, we have to realize that this is a major problem. like, don't flush your wipes. That should be.
I have a poster, yeah, in English and Spanish, and I actually have a game that I play, Don't Flush the Wipes, and it was on my. It was on, so I had it on YouTube, and then a guy from Nice Pack called me and told me I was spreading false information because they have a wipe that's flushable, and so I'm like, well, I would like to invite him to one of our wastewater treatment plants to show him what's happening. So
yeah, I think so. I think you said, because that piece is very a misnomer. Oh, it's flushable. I could just flush this. But really, I would say the senior fair next week, and then
yes,
you have to
I'll
News
put it
12.
on my thing.
Please consider that. I mean, I could, as a health educator, I could do my part, but I just think it really needs to be known.
Yes. So before we do, like, I totally agree. And then I have considered all these things, but then I just have to always consider the fact that we were called and told we're spreading false information before I jump to like the News 12. Like, I would rather do like the wastewater, like correlate together, do the wastewater treatment plant, visit, you know what I mean? So that was frustrating, but that was not the other person I worked with who was very nice, who was willing to, you know, be an educator and stuff. So he didn't even know I worked with that other person. I thought he was calling me to do education, and he's like barking me down. He's like, I know what fatbergs are. I'm like, I'm not talking about fatbergs. I'm talking about sanitary sewer overflows. You don't know what they are. They cost municipalities a lot of money. They get fined for these things. That I know because I did enforcement at the DEC. You don't even know what I'm talking. Okay, next topic.
I just don't. I don't know if everybody realizes every action they do has a reaction,
right,
and it's just important when you're buying those. Maybe there could be a sign. I don't know. I can't imagine another sign at ShopRite or Stop and Shop or anywhere, but another sign that says,
it should say do not flush on the wipe. And then if he says there's one that totally dissolves, fine. If you think one totally dissolves and it's just one type, then don't put that on the package, but maybe the rest should really say do not flush on the package.
Okay, so then I have I guess just a basic question. When if we mop our own floors, and we put a little bit of vinegar in that water, is that water then expected? I just throw it on my lawn. So should I be doing that or not?
I wouldn't think that that's a problem. I mean, that's just vinegar. It's for us, it's like when we talk about stormwater, it's like mostly phosphates that are found in like car wash. And then even like the DEC was saying, like communities have like community car washes, you know, like the kids will have car washes and they'll wash their cars and it'll go into the municipal storm drain. Technically, that's not allowed, but they're not going to shut it down because it does, like, you know, it's like typically for a good cause. And they're like, you know, honestly, it would take a lot of car wash soap to impact, you know, to make a major impact. And that's typically one day that they're doing it. But we try to tell citizens, like, just especially in the summer, wash your car in the grass, because that phosphorus combined with sunlight is what really makes an impact. And now the municipalities are not allowed to wash their cars because they have those big trucks, and they used to be washing them out on the concrete and then down the storm drain, and they have to either have a wash pad now or you know, now we're in discussions like with the county, like whose county has a facility now to wash. And so the towns and villages are not allowed to wash their municipal cars, their big trucks, to the storm drains or the wetlands or anything. They have to do it to sanitary system or wash bay.
So Jennifer, actually, I'm on the New York, I'm sorry, the council. It's called the PTA Regional, and it encompasses Rockland, Sullivan, and Orange County. Mm-hmm. So there is always, for PTAs, that is a money, a fundraiser. So maybe these information just can be taught on the region, Central Hudson region. So that might be nice. I can mention it at the next meeting. If you're going to have a car wash, let's be sensitive and have it on the grass. You never know.
Sure.
I mean, these are some things we're talking about. The youth. This is because while you're raising money, you're still hurting the environment. So let's be conscious of what we're doing.
Yeah, yeah, that would be great. And the regulation is really only to what the municipality owns. So, but still, either way, if it goes to this, waste, if it goes to the storm drain, it's going to end up in the um, the waterway. I don't know if there's like phosphate-free soap that they could use. That might make a difference. Yeah,
Yep, all these things, like these are what the PTAs want to know this, and it's just a
correct.
voice. It's a voice,
Correct.
and maybe changing. Listen, also education, but you want to change behavior.
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Thank you,
behavior
Michelle.
change.
Yes, thank you. That makes me feel great. Oh, as a matter of fact, the Stormwater Consortium is getting honored at the Hudson Valley Region Council's inaugural conference on 2024 for excellent initiatives. Yeah. And on September 27th, we are getting that award. I was just notified. I was off vacation and I came back and I was like, oh, thank you so much. So, and thank you, Michelle, for this. And, we work with the Hudson Valley Regional Council a lot. I just started networking with them. They cover 7 counties. So we're just trying to get this involved with them too. So if we can do something with fertilizer here, we can start initiating it with 7 counties too. I mean, this phosphorus issue, it's got to stop.
Okay, Jen, does anybody else have anything they'd like to add? I've got a couple comments if everybody, but I'll let you go first if somebody else has something else they want to chime in with.
I just added a chat. You can look there.
I can read it if
Yeah.
modeling. Want me to read it? Modeling behavior change, hearing that the municipals are not washing trucks on driveways, but now putting in wash pads. That is good for public to hear. How to broadcast that? Maybe social media. Thanks, Lori. Yeah, that's all good. It's all good stuff having wash pads.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's more than just the detergents. It's all the oils and the greases and everything else.
Yes. Yes. I mean, historically, those um garages, a lot of them built in the 60s, and they would wash the cars there down the drain. The drain plugs had to be plugged since like 2003 when stormwater regulations came about, but a lot of those drains can still be missed. So you get an oil spill. Next thing you know, we got oil coming down a catch basin, which actually happened when I was working I used to work as a consultant for Emmett for the storm drains, for the permit for that. And we had oil all coming out a storm drain one day, and it turned out that there was just a drain that was not cut off in a highway garage, and an oil tank breached. And those drains can be easy to miss because those garages are pretty big. So stormwater is just such a big issue. And sanitary pipes are accidentally connected into the storm drains, into the storm drain pipes. That's an ongoing issue. So we have wastewater coming out our storm drains. That's a slide I didn't even put in here. So it's always, if you see something, say something. If you smell something, say something. That's a big part of education. Michelle, we talk about that. We were talking about that with the PTAs. Laurie, just Margie, everybody. That's a big part of our education. We just made a new illicit discharge flyer. But basically, if you see something, say something. That's going to be part of our new social media outreach. Anything in the storm drains, if you see something, say something. And we actually have social media. If you want to share our social media outreach, maybe we can connect and share each other's. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for example, this is Lori again, but I would like to, I personally find that great to hear that the municipals are washing their trucks in a planned way like that. I think that's inspiring. It lets the public know that change is coming. It's kind of like, yeah, if that's happening, then that means this is getting real. And I would post that on my Strawtown Studio social media because we post a lot about water there. So where would I, for example, get information about that or a picture of it?
Sure. I have a slide that I created based off the new permit, which was just released in January. Actually, as a matter of fact, the stormwater permit said basically said that the municipalities weren't supposed to wash to the system. The last stormwater permit said it, but it was not really clear in the permit. So they made it clear this stormwater permit that was released in January. They specifically said, like, you know, towns and villages or the municipality cannot wash to the storm drain system.
That's so cool. I think that's big news in my
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was quite hard to understand in the last one because you'd read it and they'd be like, "Are you sure?" I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure because I work at the DEC." They're like, "Well, it doesn't read that way." I'm like, "You're right. It doesn't read that way, but that's what they're intending." And now it specifically says that. So, but then now, you know, some people are without, and we have to figure out how to get them to these resources. So, you know, maybe grants will come out to help them get wash bays. So, oh, and they have to have they have to have the municipal system mapped within 5 years. We're doing that at the Stormwater Consortium. We're mapping the stormwater conveyance system. It's just a municipal system. So technically, if something spills in Haverstraw, where's it going to come out? Perhaps in Stony Point, or I don't know, Stony Point to Haverstraw. I'm getting my geography a little mixed up, but
Okay. It was a great conversation. We've maybe gotten a little bit off of phosphorus a little bit, but I think I still think it's all water quality and it's all good discussion.
Yeah.
But if I could bring it back a little bit to phosphorus, Jennifer,
Sure.
Maybe something to do to help your cause. I would grab or recommend Frank Rossi and maybe New York, right? And maybe
He's
New York
right
State
here.
Turfgrass. Frank's very much involved with New York State Turfgrass Association. We've got Jesse on the panel here and myself. We might, if we could come up with some kind of recommendations for fertilizer labels, then that might be able to, through these associations, either Rockland County might be able to pass something, or we could do something statewide. But I'd start with the New York State Turfgrass Association and Dr. Rossi. He's the guru. He gets a lot of attention and he's got a lot of pull.
Oh, wow.
For other don't know, he's from Cornell.
Yes.
It's our land grant, state land grant college. The other thing too, I wanted to, keep that in mind. If you can come up with some kind of ideas, maybe we could brainstorm something on what we could either put on the packaging or some type of things that we could have the stores have to post. Something along those lines. But you should be able to put easily on a fertilizer whether or not it's going to be used for flowers or used for turf grass, for example. But you are right. It does get complicated and it gets complicated really quick.
Yeah, to the point where it's like impossible.
Even if we said new seed, but you maybe stated new seed is not a 3-inch by 3-inch patch. It needs to be
the big guy.
Yeah, it needs to be over 1,000 square feet or something for you to
easily.
Yeah, so we could brainstorm that, I think, and come up with something that might be able to help with the packaging and the selling of the fertilizers.
You know what, Matt? One more thing is the law also says it's like $50 per incident. And I don't think a store is going to care because they'll sell a big bag like that for what, $75? And they'll sell a whole a pallet of that. They'll probably have 14, 30, you know, how many bags of a good big packet of fertilizer. You multiply that, they're just selling it. $50 is nothing to them. They'll take the fine. It's not initiative.
Yeah, if that's the case, we certainly need to know about that, and then maybe some negative publicity in the paper against the company that's doing that might help prevent that also. So I don't. There's a bunch of different ways of going about that.
$50 per bag might be.
Yeah, I
more
don't know
revenue.
whether.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to brainstorm on that.
Yeah.
The other issue with phosphorus, well, first off, to Larry's, I think Larry was getting at, so the measurement of phosphorus, you have less than 0.05 milligrams per liter is considered healthy for an ecosystem. So Larry, if you're above that 0.05 megagrams per liter, then you would be considered not healthy, and then it would go up in stages how much over that limit you are. We've got, and like Larry was saying, there's a lot of data for the Sparkill Creek. We were doing data back in, I went through some old records back in 2014, for example. There was 16 sites that we were sampling on the Sparkill, and we did this through with the help of STAC, St. Thomas Aquinas. They were able to. We did nitrates and phosphates, and we were able to measure. I think the lowest one in July of 2014 of the 16 sites we did was there was actually one that came up with 0. And the worst one was at 3.91, which was really bad at the New York Armet line. Then I pulled out another one, 2016. Let's see, the lowest one would still be considered too high, 0.22 at Piermont Pier. And then the highest one at that time, we actually had a Blauvelt at Spruce Street came in at 1.72 milligrams per liter. So if they need that data, we certainly can provide a whole bunch. We can get together with you, Larry, if need be, with what I've got. Go back through some old files. But there's also another website too, Jennifer, that the EPA How's My Waterway.
Yes.
That I think yours might be, yours is different. I don't think they have harmful algae blooms on it, but they certainly do list impacted waters. When it comes to nutrients, I think that's all they say. They don't say what nutrient. I think they just say, if memory serves me correctly, that there's a nutrient problem. So it could be phosphates or nitrates. So.
Okay, yeah.
Right. And I guess, and that's a fairly easy one. Just Google How's My Waterway and you'll pop up with the EPA website, and you can just put in your zip code, I think, or it's fairly easy to navigate around.
On my interactive maps webpage, I've got a lot of resources for interactive maps. I mean, that's a whole nother presentation. And then EPA How's My Waterways up here on the right-hand side. But it's great because you can see what facilities are not in compliance with not stormwater, but wastewater, which is tells us, how many nutrients have been, going into the waters, which my interns have found amazing because then they've left and done wonderful watershed studies on nutrient impacts. They can then get grants. It's just been wonderful. The DEC has a lot of interactive maps. They have this info locator, which provides you with a lot of resources and information, permit limits, stuff like that. Like for instance, we have the mining facility up in Clarkstown, and their permit gets renewed every 3 years, and it's been getting renewed since like 1978 with no issue. And the suspended solids are getting discharged into Lake DeForest, and suspended solids have nutrients in it, phosphorus, nitrogen, naturally they do. So that could be contributing, or eventually will contribute to the issue, so how do we change a permit on a mining operation? I just don't even know how to do that. So, yeah. But eventually it will probably have to be addressed, how do you treat wastewater effluent from a mining operation? Do we continue to discharge it into our surface waters? Eventually, with all the stormwater runoff and the pollution we're starting to have everywhere, we're going to have to address that also.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yes. And then so when you look at my interactive map and then you add the permits on top of it, it's called SPEEDIES permit, state pollution discharge elimination permits that are discharging nutrients. There's all these other things. So many factors. Yeah. I don't know why I ever asked myself, what is the challenge in stormwater? That was the worst question I ever asked myself.
So I guess the only thing I'd like to add is also the idea of the phosphorus, it doesn't leach nearly as much as the nitrogen or the nitrates in fertilizers. So have you come up with any number one, I would wonder if a lot of this is tied to erosion, where the phosphorus might actually be on the soil particle itself that's being eroded away. And if you've got any data on groundwater, how is our groundwater supplies pertaining to phosphorus?
So actually, Matt, you would be definitely more the expert on that than I am. And then maybe, like our horticultural lab technician, Mike Wilson, he knows a lot about this because he worked as a horticulturalist. I unfortunately have tried my best to grow things. I'm so embarrassed to say I went to school for environmental science, major and master's. I love it. Get me talking on the topic, I won't stop. But I really am more a regulator. Since I worked in New York City's drinking water, wastewater, I'll just get me on that system and I love it. But this is the type of stuff where I don't have that information. I don't have the information either on how the phosphate, nitrogen, all that bonds to the soil, or how much there would be in the drinking water. Perhaps Ariana Polanco would have that with the Drinking Water Task Force. So that, or Frank Rossi might be a better option. But that's something that I'm not, that I actually don't know. We would need
we might be able
more.
what we might be able to do with this, Beth, if you're listening, maybe at our next meeting, actually, it's a good segue into that, is from Dana, and she's going to talk about pollinator pathways in October. We've added her, and she's going to talk about pollinator gardens as they relate to water quality. And what I will try to do with that is I will try to get a representative from Viola to maybe make a comment on how our drinking water is impacted by these and what they do. Because I'm sure if it's all running into Lake DeForest, they must do something to it to treat it so that we're not drinking it. So, and they must have standards. So we'll try and make a pitch to them to be able to make sure they're at our next meeting. And I would welcome everybody else to kind of continue this maybe in next month, and we could maybe tackle this from that direction also. That sound like a—
Yeah, I mean, Matt, I always love that conversation. I'm just going to say what I'm hearing in my head is that we've looked at Lake DeForest and these impacts and inquired about it for years, and it has become a big merry-go-round. Everybody says it's not their jurisdiction. The water company says it's not their job to look into, impacts. The DEC says it's not theirs. Clarkstown says it's not theirs. The county says it's not theirs. And so if there's one thing we could do is to figure out, well, who is going to do it? I think it's time to get to that answer.
There's some plans. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I wasn't thinking of them. I was just them reporting the data, and not so much that they have to do something about it, but more of, okay, what's the data? If it's a problem, if let's say phosphorus is a problem with drinking water and they have to treat it in some way, then that becomes our issue in a sense of, through, like you were saying too, Lori, with education and whatever we can do to change the public's knowledge that, hey, this is a problem. So just looking at it along those terms, yeah, I think Viola certainly is going to go and say, hey, we can't do anything about the water entering our property if it's coming from somebody else upstream. So
this meeting today is starts to get close to how we could mobilize and create an action plan to behavioral change.
We definitely saw that in Kingston. In Kingston, the Rockland County Department of Health has a grant called Creating Healthy Schools and Communities, but the parts of Kingston also has that grant. Interesting what they're doing in the community in the city of Kingston is to have these pollinator, not gardens, but really that will help with drainage and it's more of a beautification. I mean, that might be, maybe there's some grants that can do that, but the beautification, it's beautiful. And then that these little gardens per se also are helping with drainage and look nice. It might be just something to really think about. Maybe there's.
I like tying the idea of beautification with a more wide sweeping change.
Yeah, I saw it also in, we were just in Binghamton is doing it too. So these initiatives are around the state. Maybe I could see how we could, I don't know if the health department would do that, but maybe at the New York State Department of Health. I mean, we want to be a healthy community and have healthy drinking water, and then also making those drainage and have a more of a nicer pollinator garden. Just something to think about. It got me thinking. I don't know if it's dangerous to have me on these on this.
No, not at all. You know what? As a matter of fact, there are some initiatives, plans now being reviewed at Clarkstown, and because I work with them a lot, to actually reduce phosphorus loads going into, I think, Lake DeForest. I think we were going to pull Viola in to see if I can't, we talked about this before. I got interns. It's such a crazy summer with interns, but I think we were going to try to pull Viola in to see if they wanted to do like signage or beautification or something like that on this property. So that's always going to be an ongoing discussion. I work closely with Bill Madden. As a matter of fact, our sustainability walk is September 29th at Congers Lake, and it's free and open to the public. Bill Madden is there. He's wonderful.
Right.
They're always looking for ways to publicize things. And I think actually at Congers Lake, Clarkstown had briefly spoken about perhaps working with Viola to put signage out when they put in something that they want to apply for a grant for, that they can get a grant for, to reduce phosphorus loads, and they're working on like conservation meadows. They got a great new technician who was supposed to be here today to help with this presentation. Her name is Madison. She's wonderful. It just environmentalist. So they are looking to really do wonderful things. They're a great team to work with. Want to pull in Viola. So yes, we can bring Madison in. She couldn't be here today. She had a doctor appointment. So hopefully she can come the next time. Dana's also wonderful. I want to say my house is now on the pollinator pathway, and these natives, I mean, they have done something else for reducing the runoff.
And is anyone also working with the plans for near 9W that's going to have that bike path that's going to connect Nyack with, I believe, Bear Mountain with the bike path? Like that should be there. That should be part of that greenway.
Yeah, Madison could definitely answer those questions, bring it back to Clarkstown, and we could bring Dana in. We could maybe connect Cornell. Cornell is trying to work with communities also to have their master gardeners go out with towns and villages and whatnot to do this type of thing. Cornell runs on grants, so it can be sticky. And, Dana would need to be compensated too, absolutely. So we just, need to work that stuff out, but all stuff that needs to and should be happening. I think Rockland can do so much. We can do so much together.
Yeah, that's great. Dana is October 23rd next month. So hopefully everybody can attend that meeting, and looking forward to what Dana has to say for sure. I just want to be cognizant and aware we've got a little bit about a half an hour or so. And if we're going to do Beth, do we have enough people to vote?